Hi everybody, it's Rebecca Virginia, and today I have 3 rustic fall DIYs to share with you. Let's get started. First up is a patch of pumpkins made from children's socks you can find at the Dollar Tree. You can make this DIY really rustic by creating your own faux rusting muffin tin, or make it a little more farmhouse by placing it in a basket or using just one on a tiered tray. Here's what you need. To start off this DIY, I took a pack of white children's socks from the Dollar Tree, and then I just cut off the top portion as well as the heel of the sock. Now we're going to begin dyeing our socks orange so that they begin to look like pumpkins. I took one of these trays from the Dollar Tree, it came in a 2-pack, and I poured in just a bit of water. And then also from the Dollar Tree, I'm using orange paint and just one very small dab of brown paint. Then for the next section, I decided to put on some plastic gloves so that I didn't dirty up a brush. So I put on my plastic gloves and then I just mixed everything together, the paint and the water. So we have a stain, but it's pretty paint heavy. Then I took my freshly cut sock and I am just mixing this all up in the paint so that it is going to be dyed. And I did this with all 5 other socks that I had already cut from the Dollar Tree. Then I left this outside in a sunny patch and I let it dry for 24 hours. It was pretty saturated, so it took a while to dry. I saw Silver Farmhouse create this DIY on her blog, so I am just recreating it. And she took a muffin tin, mine's from the Dollar Tree, don't know where she got hers from, and I'm roughing it up a bit with sandpaper because we're going to be applying this cinnamon paint mixture to it. And it might have worked on hers, but for Dollar Tree items, I tend to rough them up, especially if they're metal before, just so it adheres a bit better. And I am taking Mod Podge and cinnamon. We're going to be creating a faux rustic, or not rustic, rusting, but I guess that's very rustic, faux rusting effect. And I ended up adding a tiny bit of brown paint as well to this mixture, because you'll see me smearing it on at first, and I'm like, it kind of just looks like mud. I'm not getting that rusty effect that I really wanted, so I do end up going back in with a little bit of brown paint. And I also found that using a brush versus like a popsicle stick or your fingers worked better. It just kind of spread everything out a bit more, and also dabbing it made it look more rusty too. It was, a little bit of trial and error trying to make sure that it had a rusty effect and not a mud splattered effect. And I think I was able to achieve it, especially in the lower right-hand part of the muffin tin. I think that really looks more like rust than mud, and I just continue doing this all over the muffin tin, not actually going in where our pumpkins are going to go because they're going to cover up everything, but I just went along the top and sides of our tin. The socks are now dried, and it's time to turn them into pumpkins. So I am taking this filling and just stuffing it into our sock, and you actually need a lot more than you probably think. You want it to be quite full. And then I am taking a cinnamon stick, I broke it in half. This is going to be the stem of our pumpkin, and that's going to go down in the center, and I'm just tying this in with a piece of jute. Again, you're probably going to need more stuffing than you think. I made a few with a little bit of stuffing, and they didn't end up looking like pumpkins, so you definitely want it to be very full. Now it's time to start making this orange ball look a bit more like a pumpkin. So I am not tying, just wrapping jute around that stem top portion of our soon-to-be pumpkin, and then I am just taking the jute across and very tightly pulling it before wrapping it around again, and then taking the jute and again very tightly pulling it underneath the pumpkin. You can see this is starting to make the seams in the pumpkin. I ended up doing this 3 times so that I would have 6 lines of jute or seams. And again, you really want to pull them tight so that the stuffed pumpkin is poking through and really protruding in between each of the jute sections. And you don't have to worry about having this perfect because I'm going to tie this off, and it doesn't look very pretty at the top, but don't worry, we're going to cover it soon. And this is when you can really play around and manipulate the jute and just pull it around so that your pumpkin has even little indentations or seams. Now that I've done that on all 6 of my pumpkin socks, I'm going to make some leaves for my pumpkins. So this first one I kind of used as a pattern, and I'm just taking some dark green burlap ribbon that I got from the Dollar Tree, of course, and just cutting out little leaves out of it. I'm using these small precision scissors, also from the Dollar Tree, the Crafter Square section, and they're my favorite for making small intricate cuts. And to make everything a bit more rustic, I kind of did this by accident with the first one. It started fraying, but I actually really liked how it looked. I thought it looked very rustic. So I just pulled off the edges on the leaves so that they were nice and frayed and looked distressed. Next, to make it really look like these pumpkins were coming from the pumpkin patch, I grabbed some Spanish moss and my hot glue gun and just started putting it all the way around that cinnamon stick on the top of the pumpkin. I love the extra rustic look that the Spanish moss gave to my pumpkins, and after I put it on top of all of the pumpkins, I went back in with the burlap leaves, and some I kind of pinched close together. Some leaves I had lying flat on the pumpkins. I wanted them all to be a little bit different, and then I put them on different sides of the cinnamon sticks. Then once I had all of my leaves on before I was complete and wanted to put them in the tin, I saw these really cute labels from the Dollar Tree, so I went ahead and put pumpkins on one of them. And silly me didn't realize that they were stickers, so I just placed it onto a piece of computer paper and then cut it out so that it wasn't sticking to my pumpkins. And after I cut out this label, I just took some jute and made a little tie, and then I brought over my pumpkins in a muffin tin, and over one of them I just put it over top of the cinnamon stick so that it was just hanging off. I absolutely love how these turned out, but if the muffin tin is a little too rustic for your taste, you can always style the pumpkins on their own or put them all together in a basket to display for the fall season. Next up is some more pumpkin decor using the wood ornaments from the Dollar Tree. Here are the other supplies you'll need. I got quite a few requests in my last video on how to make a fork bow, so I knew that I had to do a DIY incorporating that. So first off, to make this craft, I am taking one of the pumpkin wood ornaments from the Dollar Tree, and I traced it out onto a piece of burlap fabric. But after I traced it out, I realized that probably wasn't the best route. There were small little indentations of the pumpkin that you couldn't really see, so I just cut out kind of around that area and put Mod Podge down onto my wood ornament, and then I placed the burlap fabric onto that, and I figured I would do more intricate cutting once the Mod Podge had dried. And I did just place a coaster over it so that it dried nice and tightly to the wood pumpkin. And again, once that had dried, I went in with my tiny precision scissors and was able to cut a little bit closer to the wood ornament and get more of those intricate little indentations on the top and bottom sections of our pumpkin. Next, I took one of the small wood pallets from the Dollar Tree and using a wet paper towel and some Waverly stain, I went ahead and just stained the entire wood palette, even getting into those inner sections just in case that they showed through. While the wood palette was drying, I moved back onto my pumpkin ornament. So I took some of this orange paint, actually called Pumpkin by Waverly, and painted the burlap. It looks like it's clinging in some places to the burlap, but once it dried, it all dried out the same color. And I also took some brown paint for the stem. Then I wanted to make a layered bow, so first off I took a small piece of green ribbon, then laid a longer piece of jute down the center. I folded the ribbon over the jute, then pulled nice and tight and made a knot, and this is a really quick and easy way to make a simple bow. Once you've tied the knot, then you can fluff out the bow, and especially if it has wire like this one, You can make it form really in any way that you want. You can have it curved on the edges or make it large. All right, now moving on to our fork bow, which so many of you requested. You are going to take your fork and your piece of ribbon and kind of make a V shape. So one piece of the ribbon is behind the fork and one is in front. The piece of ribbon that is behind the fork, you're going to pull through and poke it through the very center section of the fork. So you will poke that through and pull it behind. Then while you're pulling it behind, you're going to come up and over that same center section of the fork, and then you just make a knot. It's really that simple. When I'm making the knot, I try to pull the ribbons down a little bit just so it lays flat. Then you just gently slide your bow off the fork and you have this really tiny, very delicate looking bow. And I'm going to show you all again just on a blank background. I thought the one with the paint might have been a little confusing. So again, you are making this kind of V shape, poking the ribbon through the center of the fork, going over that other piece of ribbon. Then you pull it behind, and while you are pulling it behind, you are going to go up and over that center section of the fork again. And you can see the bow is starting to form. And then you are going to tie those two pieces into a knot. Again, I like to kind of pull the ribbons down so it's a bit of a flatter bow. Then you can flip the fork over, you see the really cute bow, and gently slide it off. Once my bows were done, it was time to hot glue them in place. I first glued down the green ribbon, and then I put our newly formed fork bow on top of that. And then I hot glued the wood ornament onto our wood palette. As the last little embellishment, I took some green floral wire and just wound it up around a really small pen so that it made this kind of curly Q. And then I hot glued that underneath the ribbon so it looked like vines coming out of my wood pumpkin. Let me know down below in the comments if you've ever done a fork bow before, or if you know of another way to make a bow that I should try. The last DIY is a super quick and easy one. You can make it in under a minute. Here are the supplies that you'll need to create this toilet paper pumpkin. First off, you're going to need a roll of toilet paper, and then I took a piece of orange fabric. This one is about 18 by 18 inches, but since there's no sewing or glue involved, you'll be able to tell if you have scrap fabric and you start wrapping the pumpkin and you find out you need more. You can always go ahead and go in with a larger piece. That's the other really nice thing about this DIY, is there's no glue or tape or sewing or any of that involved. You're just going to place the toilet paper on top of the fabric and start tucking the fabric into the center of the toilet paper roll. And then I just took a twig from outside and a leaf that I got off of one of my fall floral picks and just placed it to the side. It's super easy. I've done it with an apple, now a pumpkin. I just have to figure out how I can do this for the winter season. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any ideas. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep searching, keep creating.